Welcome to Cheat Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. I didn't leave in anger. I left in silence, the kind of silence that follows a decision made so deeply and so finally that there's nothing left to say out loud. I packed while she slept. I set the letter on the kitchen table, and when the door closed behind me, I never looked back. Not once. Not ever. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Daniel. I was married for 11 years to a woman named Claire. And for most of those 11 years, I believed completely and without question that I was living the life I was supposed to live. The house, the routines, the Saturday mornings and the shared grocery lists, and the comfortable, settled rhythm of two people who had chosen each other and kept choosing each other. Every ordinary day, I was wrong. The signs, looking back, were the kind you only see clearly once you're already on the other side of them. The kind your brain works very hard to explain away, because the alternative explanation is too large, too catastrophic, too completely life-altering to process while you're still in the middle of it. She started working late. Not occasionally, consistently. A new project. Always a new project. Always something that required her presence in ways that couldn't be managed from home, or rescheduled or shortened just this once. Her phone became private. Not dramatically. Subtly. The small adjustments of someone managing two separate lives and getting better at it with practice. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself I trusted her. I told myself that 11 years of a life together was evidence enough that I wasn't being a fool. I was being a fool. The night I found out, I won't describe it in detail, because the details aren't what matter. What matters is what happened inside me when I knew. Not the anger. I expected anger. What I didn't expect was the stillness that came underneath it. That cold, clear, absolute stillness of a man who has just had every remaining question answered and now knows, with complete certainty, exactly what he has to do. I didn't wake her. I didn't confront her. I didn't give her the chance to perform, and she would have performed beautifully, as she always did. I went to my desk. I sat down. And I wrote. 4 pages. Handwritten. Not because I'm sentimental, but because I wanted her to feel the weight of it. The physical, undeniable reality of 4 pages of ink pressed into paper by a man sitting alone at midnight, writing the truest things he had ever said to the person he had trusted most. I told her I knew. Not the surface of it. All of it. The name. The timeline. The specific, careful ways she had rearranged our life to accommodate something I was never supposed to find out about. I told her how long I had known, and how I had spent that time, not falling apart, not confronting, not threatening, preparing. Quietly. Completely. I told her about the accounts I had separated, the legal documents I had filed, the arrangements I had made, carefully, methodically, with the same quiet diligence I had applied to every other part of our shared life, to ensure that when I walked out clean. Nothing owed, nothing contested, nothing left between us except the 4 pages on the table. I told her what I had loved about her, genuinely, because I had. For 11 years I had. And I wanted her to read that in the same letter that told her what she had done with it, so she could hold both things at once and feel the full weight of the choice she had made. And then, at the bottom of the 4th page, I wrote the last thing. The part I knew she would carry longest. The part I wrote not in anger, not in bitterness, but in the flat, even tone of a man stating something he knows to be true and is leaving behind for someone else to eventually understand. You didn't lose me the night I found out. You lost me every day you chose to lie. Every morning you kissed me goodbye and came home to me and looked me in the eye. That's not a mistake. That's a decision. Made over and over again. And this, walking out this door, is mine. I folded the letter, wrote her name on the front, set it on the kitchen table where she'd see it first thing, took off my ring, set it on top, and I left. I had planned for this with the same thoroughness I applied to everything. A new city, a furnished apartment already rented under arrangements that gave me the privacy I needed. A new phone number, shared with exactly 3 people, none of whom had any connection to Claire or the life I was stepping out of. My finances were already separated, already clean, already entirely mine. I was not findable. Not because I was hiding in any dramatic sense, but because I had simply, deliberately, stepped out of every channel through which she could reach me. No social media, no mutual friends notified in advance, no explanatory conversations, no closure meetings, no opportunities for her to deploy the particular brand of articulate, emotional intelligence she used whenever she needed to reframe a situation in her favor. I had watched her do it with other people, smooth and warm and completely convincing, and I had no interest in becoming the next subject of that performance. I had said everything I needed to say. It was on the table, in 4 pages of handwriting she could read at whatever speed her conscience allowed. The first day in the new city, I walked for a long time. No destination, just streets and air and the strange, unmoored sensation of a life that had been completely restructured overnight. I ate at a small restaurant where nobody knew my name. I slept in a bed that carried no history. I didn't feel free. Not yet. That came later. What I felt that first day was the specific exhaustion of someone who has been carrying something very heavy for a very long time and has finally, just now, set it down. My phone, my old phone, I had left in the glove box of the car. Turned on. Connected. So that the calls and texts and voicemails had somewhere to go, so that she knew I existed somewhere, breathing, intact, just completely and permanently unreachable. I checked it once, 3 days later, from a distance. 112 missed calls, 47 text messages, 6 voicemails, each one longer than the last. I didn't listen to any of them. I put it back, closed the glove box, and drove away. I know what she did in those first weeks, not because I watched, but because people talk. And some of what was said eventually, indirectly, reached me. She called everyone. Friends, family, mutual connections, working through every network available to her, looking for a thread that would lead her back to me. She was composed about it, apparently. Controlled, asking careful questions, framing things carefully, not revealing more than she needed to, managing the narrative even in crisis, even in the specific crisis of a husband who had left a 4-page letter and vanished without a forwarding address. What she told people, I don't know exactly. Some version of events that centered her confusion and softened her role. Some version that cast the disappearance as the dramatic act and the years of lying as the context that explained it. She was good at versions. She had been writing them for a long time. What I know is that the letter, my letter, she didn't read it fully at first. Not because she couldn't, but because she wouldn't. A mutual friend told me this, years later, with the careful hesitation of someone sharing information they weren't sure they should. Claire had opened it, read the first page, maybe 2, and then folded it back up and put it in a drawer. Couldn't finish it, wouldn't finish it. Because finishing it meant sitting with all 4 pages, meant reading the last paragraph, meant holding the full weight of what I had written and what it said about the choices she had made, one careful, deliberate lie at a time. She wasn't ready for that. So she put it away, and she went back to living. Mine grew slowly, the way things grow when they're finally given enough room. The new city was nothing like home, which was exactly what I needed. New streets, new rhythms, new people who had no version of me to compare me against. I was just a man who had arrived quietly and kept to himself and showed up day after day without the weight of a story anyone already knew. I worked. I built something smaller and more deliberate than what I'd had before. Not smaller in any way that diminished me, but smaller in the way of a life that has been stripped back to what actually matters and allowed to grow from there. I had space to think. I read more than I had in years. I cooked, slowly, without purpose, just for the pleasure of it. I made friends gradually, the kind you make as an adult, which is to say, slowly, without urgency, with the mutual unspoken understanding that neither of you is performing anything for the other. I dated, eventually, carefully, with the specific caution of a person who has learned, not from theory, but from experience, the difference between trusting someone and simply needing to believe they're trustworthy. I was happy, not the performed happiness of someone who needs you to know they're fine, just the quiet, unglamorous, daily happiness of a life that belongs to you, entirely, unconditionally, without asterisks. I didn't think about Claire often. That surprised me. At first, I had expected grief to be louder, more persistent, more demanding. Instead, it came in small waves, occasional and brief, and each time it was less about her specifically, and more about the version of my life I had believed in, the one I had built around a foundation that turned out to be hollow. You grieve that differently, quieter, and it heals eventually in ways that anger never quite does. 3 years passed, then 4, then 5. The divorce had been finalized without drama. My preparation had ensured that. Clean documents, clear terms, no contested ground. Her attorney had tried several angles. Mine had closed each one efficiently. She had signed. I had signed. The 11 years were legally concluded in a conference room I attended by phone, from a city she didn't know I was in. I heard about her life in fragments, the way you hear about people you used to know when you share a social world with people who knew you both. She had moved. She had a new position at work, a promotion apparently, something she'd worked toward for a long time. She was seeing someone, then not. Then someone new. I received this information the way you receive weather reports about a city you used to live in. Noted, filed, moved on. Until the year I heard she was sick. Not terminally, I want to be clear about that. But seriously enough, the kind of illness that rearranges a person. That strips the performance away and leaves them in the direct, unmediated company of their own life and the choices that built it. I heard this from the mutual friend who had told me about the letter. The same careful hesitation in their voice, the same sense of carrying information that had weight they weren't sure how to distribute. She's been thinking about a lot of things, they said. She asked about you. I didn't respond to that, but something shifted in me, quiet and private and hard to name. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not even softness. More like the particular clarity of a person who has healed enough to look back without flinching. She read the letter fully for the first time, all 4 pages, 5 years after I left. The mutual friend told me this too, eventually. Not immediately, but eventually, on a quiet evening when we were talking about something else entirely, and the subject of Claire surfaced the way it sometimes did, without warning, like a stone turning up during gardening. She'd found the drawer, apparently, during the move after the illness, packing, reorganizing, going through things she'd accumulated and never sorted. The envelope was still there. My handwriting, her name on the front. She sat down on the floor of her half-packed bedroom and read all 4 pages. The mutual friend didn't tell me everything that happened after that. Some things were Claire's, to feel, to carry, to reckon with privately in whatever way she was capable of. I didn't need the details. What I was told was this. She sat there for a very long time, didn't move, didn't make calls, didn't start managing the narrative or reaching for a version of events she could live with more comfortably. Just sat, with 4 pages of someone else's handwriting telling her the truth about herself with a clarity and completeness she'd never given me credit for having. And the last paragraph, the one I'd written in the flat, even tone of a man, stating something permanently true. She read it more than once. I know because the mutual friend told me, quietly, looking at their hands, that Claire had memorized it, that she could recite it, word for word, years later. You didn't lose me the night I found out. You lost me every day you chose to lie. She found me. I don't know entirely how. I had been careful, but 5 years is a long time, and people are determined when they've decided something matters. A letter arrived at an address I hadn't given her. Short. Handwritten, which surprised me. 4 sentences. I read all of it. I've read it many times now. I don't expect anything from you. I know I don't have the right to. I just needed you to know that you were right. About all of it. I sat with that letter for a long time. I didn't respond immediately. I made coffee. I sat by the window of the apartment I'd lived in for 3 years, the one with the good morning light and the view of a street I'd come to know like an old friend. I read her 4 sentences again. And then I set it down on the table and just sat with it. There was no triumph in it. I want to be clear about that, because I think people expect there to be. 11 years of betrayal, 5 years of silence, and then 4 sentences of admission, and surely that should feel like something closing, like a score being settled, like the satisfaction of being told you were right. It didn't feel like that. It felt like standing at the site of something that had burned down long ago and finding it still. Finally, completely cold. I wrote back. Once. Short. I know. I hope you're well. I meant both sentences. People ask me sometimes, the ones who know enough of the story to ask, whether I regret the way I handled it. The letter. The disappearance. The silence that stretched for years before she was finally ready to read what I'd left behind. I think about it honestly when the question comes, without the filter of what makes a better story or a more forgivable answer. Here's what I know. I didn't leave to punish her. Punishment requires ongoing investment, attention, energy, the willingness to keep watching someone experience the consequences you've arranged. I had none of that left. What I had was the desire to be somewhere she was not, living something she couldn't reach, building something she hadn't touched. The letter wasn't revenge. The letter was clarity. Mine first, and then hers, when she was finally ready to receive it. It was the one thing I could give her that she couldn't reframe or redirect or perform her way around. 4 pages of someone who had loved her completely, telling her the exact and specific truth of what she had done with that love. Some truths need time before they can be absorbed. Some things we write down not because we expect them to land immediately, but because we know, with the cold certainty of someone who has stopped hoping, that eventually they will. She wasn't ready the morning she found the letter. She wasn't ready for the first year, or the second, or the third. By the 5th, she was. And that, the timing of it, was never mine to control. That was always hers. And in its own way, that was the most honest thing about all of it. There's a particular kind of peace that exists on the other side of a decision like this, not the peace of having won something, or proven something, or outlasted something. Just the simple, unadorned peace of a life that belongs to you, fully, without negotiation, without the constant low-level labor of managing someone else's version of who you are. I live somewhere I chose for myself. I work at something I built without asking permission. I love someone now, slowly, carefully, with the specific attentiveness of a man who has learned what inattention costs and has decided, permanently, never to be careless with the people who trust him. I don't think about Claire often. When I do, it's without the sharp edges it once had. Time does that. Healing does that. The slow, patient work of building something real in the place where something hollow used to be. I think about the letter sometimes, the 4 pages, the ring on the table, the door closing behind me in the dark of an early morning while she was still upstairs, asleep, entirely unaware that the life she'd been maintaining with such careful, practiced effort was already over. I don't regret it. Not the leaving, not the silence, not even the years of distance that felt, from the outside, like coldness, but from the inside felt like the first real breath I'd taken in a very long time. She read the letter eventually. She understood it eventually. And somewhere in those 5 years between the writing and the reading, both of us, separately, in cities that had nothing to do with each other, became more honest versions of ourselves than we had been when we were together. That's not a happy ending, exactly. But it's a true one, and after 11 years of carefully maintained fiction, truth, even when it arrives late and costs everything, truth is the only thing worth having. I left a letter. I disappeared. And years later, when she finally read it, the words were exactly as I'd written them. Patient, permanent, and completely, quietly right. Some things don't need a response. Some things just need time, and the kind of silence that only comes from a man who finally knew when to stop explaining himself and start living. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching.